Sean Hornbeck was a young boy from Richwoods, Missouri, a small rural town in Washington County. He was 11 years old, a typical boy who loved playing sports, particularly baseball, and spending time with his family. On the afternoon of October 6, 2002, Sean asked his parents if he could ride his bike to a friend's house. It was a request he had made many times before, and his parents, Pam and Craig Ackers, agreed, with the condition that he would return by 5 p.m. for dinner. After saying goodbye, Sean set off on his bike, as was his usual routine. His parents didn't think anything of it. As 5 p.m. came and went, Sean had yet to return home. At first, his parents assumed he was just running a bit late, something that often happened when kids got caught up in fun with friends. But as the minutes passed, and Sean still didn't appear, Pam and Craig began to feel a pang of worry. When they called the friend's house, they learned that Sean had not visited them that day. A deeper sense of concern started to take hold. By evening, with no sign of Sean, panic set in. Pam and Craig called everyone they could think of. Friends, family, anyone who might have seen him. But no one had any information. Sean had vanished without a trace. It wasn't long before they contacted the authorities. The local police, along with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, were notified. Soon, the FBI joined the search. In the following hours and days, community members, friends, and neighbors rallied together, retracing Sean's steps in hopes of finding any clue that could explain his disappearance. The search began with the places Sean was known to visit. Witnesses recalled seeing him near the school earlier that day, and they remembered him passing a familiar dirt road. But after that, there was no trace of him. The search was thorough, but it led to nothing. The town was left to wonder. Where was Sean, and what had happened to him? As the hours turned into days, the fear that had crept into Pam and Craig's hearts grew deeper. Their son was missing, and no one knew where he was. The search was far from over, but at that moment, it seemed as though Sean could have disappeared without a trace, leaving only questions behind. Welcome to Unmasked, the channel you come to hear the shocking and the unbelievable. You like your stories real, raw, and unsettling? Good. Hit subscribe, turn on that bell, and join us as we pull back the mask, one case at a time. The search for Sean Hornbeck began immediately. Law enforcement, along with community members, worked tirelessly from the moment he was reported missing. The quiet town of Richwoods, which had never faced such a tragedy, was suddenly engulfed in a relentless pursuit to find the 11-year-old boy. Every lead, no matter how small, was followed with hope that it would bring them closer to Sean. Local police officers began retracing Sean's steps, interviewing witnesses and gathering any clues they could find. The last confirmed sighting of Sean was around 4:30 p.m., when he was seen near the school by a classmate. As time passed, more people came forward, claiming to have seen Sean in the hours before his disappearance. The most chilling detail came from a witness who described seeing him heading toward a remote stretch of woods just outside of town. Was this just an innocent detour on his way to his friend's house? Or was something more sinister at play? The investigation quickly expanded, and authorities turned their attention to potential suspects. Local registered sex offenders and individuals with histories of criminal behavior were interviewed, but no substantial evidence linked any of them to Sean's disappearance. Despite the initial investigation being thorough, each lead seemed to come to a dead end. To aid the investigation, bloodhounds were brought in to track Sean's scent. The dogs were deployed to retrace his steps in the area where he was last seen. Unfortunately, their efforts led to nothing. No scent trail, no new clues, just more uncertainty. The lack of evidence only deepened the mystery surrounding Sean's disappearance. Meanwhile, disturbing tips and false leads continued to flood in. One such tip claimed there had been a car accident near the area where Sean was last seen, suggesting that the boy might have been injured or involved in the incident. Investigators rushed to the site, only to discover that the supposed accident never happened. It was yet another false lead, adding to the growing frustration of the authorities and Sean's family. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement, volunteers, and the community, no trace of Sean could be found. The woods were scoured, the surrounding areas thoroughly searched, and every lead followed, but it seemed as though the boy had vanished into thin air. With each passing day, the fear grew. Sean's family was desperate for answers, yet no one could provide the crucial piece of information needed to bring him home. The search continued, but it seemed to move further into the unknown. The investigation, once full of optimism, now felt like an uphill battle against time and the silence of the land around them. Would they ever find Sean, or was he truly gone? The question haunted everyone involved in the search. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. With each passing moment, hope began to fade. The Hornbeck family's world was now filled with a quiet, unbearable weight. Every day without answers felt like a cruel reminder of Sean's absence. But despite the growing despair, Pam and Craig refused to give up. They plastered flyers all over town, appeared on television news broadcasts, and reached out to every outlet they could find to keep Sean's case in the public eye. They would not let their son's disappearance be forgotten. The small town of Richwoods, once energized by a sense of urgency, began to feel the heavy toll of the search. While the Hornbecks worked tirelessly to keep the case alive, the police found themselves running out of leads. Investigators followed every possible angle, but each lead seemed to vanish just as quickly as it appeared. The town, which had once rallied together in a united effort, started to lose faith. With no fresh clues, the momentum behind the search began to stall. Yet, in the hearts of Sean's family, one undeniable truth remained. Sean was out there somewhere. They refused to believe that he was lost forever. Pam and Craig's resolve was unwavering. No matter how much time passed, they would never stop searching. They knew they had to hold onto that hope, even as the world around them seemed to move on. In the months that followed, community-driven efforts kept the search alive. Volunteers continued to search the woods and nearby areas, organizing weekend searches and distributing more posters. People continued to show up, willing to offer anything they could to help. But despite their efforts, no new clues emerged. The case, which had once been the center of attention, began to fade from the headlines. Amidst the growing uncertainty, an unexpected lead came in. A man named Lou Kent, a local recluse, claimed to have had a vivid dream in which he saw the location of Sean's burial site. His account, though strange, was taken seriously enough to warrant further investigation. Investigators visited Lou's property and carefully searched the area, but once again, their efforts led to nothing. Lou's dream was nothing more than a bizarre and unsubstantiated claim. Still, it added another layer of frustration to an already difficult situation. Along with Lou's dream, other tips came in from self-proclaimed psychics, all offering insights into where Sean might be. But each psychic lead turned out to be another dead end. The search felt endless, and with each false lead, the sense of hope began to slip further away. Despite the growing silence, the Hornbecks remained determined, tirelessly fighting to keep their son's case in the public eye. But as months passed, the search began to stall. Public interest, once so vibrant, began to wane. The world had moved on, but Sean's family never did. For years after Sean Hornbeck's disappearance, a case eerily similar to his unfolded just miles away. A young boy named Ben Umd, only 13 years old, vanished without a trace in the nearby town of Beaufort, Missouri, in January 2007. The details of Ben's abduction were chillingly familiar. Sean's case was still fresh in the minds of local law enforcement and residents, and as the similarities between the two cases became clear, the investigation into Ben's disappearance took on a renewed urgency. The authorities, already haunted by the memory of Sean's case, immediately feared that the same person who had abducted Sean might be responsible for Ben's abduction as well. The timing and circumstances seemed too close to ignore. But this time, the investigation would take an unexpected turn. One of the key pieces of the puzzle came from a local teenager named Michelle Halls. She had witnessed a suspicious white van near the location where Ben was last seen. Her account was detailed and precise, describing the van's rusty fenders, elongated rear window, and specific markings on the vehicle. Michelle's observations proved to be invaluable. Her ability to recall such fine details set the stage for a breakthrough that would soon lead authorities to a suspect, an unlikely one at that. Authorities began investigating the vehicle Michelle had described, and after tracking down the registration details, they found it belonged to a man named Michael Devlin, a local man with no prior criminal record. Michael was a manager at a pizzeria, an unassuming figure in the community, and there was nothing in his background that would raise suspicion. To all appearances, he was just another ordinary man living a quiet life in the small town. But as investigators delved deeper into his personal life, they realized that his seemingly normal existence concealed something much darker. They tracked Devlin's truck and investigated his workplace, digging into his daily routine and connections. As they pieced together his movements and habits, the investigators began to question his behavior. Devlin had worked at the pizzeria for years and was known to the community as someone who kept to himself. But there were signs that something wasn't quite right. A pattern of behavior emerged, a pattern that, when connected with the details of Sean and Ben's disappearances, began to paint a disturbing picture. Just when it seemed like the investigation was going to hit a dead end again, a crucial link was uncovered, a connection between Devlin's truck and the scenes of both boys' abductions. This lead, though seemingly small at first, would unravel the mystery of Sean's disappearance and reveal the horrifying truth that had been hidden in plain sight for years. The investigation into Michael Devlin, once focused on routine details, now became the key to solving not only Ben's case but also Sean's. The link between Devlin's truck and both abductions was undeniable, and as investigators closed in on their suspect, they could finally see the horrifying connection between the two missing children. It was a discovery that would change everything and lead the authorities to the unthinkable. After months of painstaking investigation, the breakthrough the authorities had been waiting for finally arrived. Michael Devlin, the quiet pizzeria manager who had been living under the radar for years, was arrested. The details surrounding his arrest were harrowing. Devlin, who had once seemed like an ordinary man, was now the prime suspect in 2 abductions. As the authorities closed in on him, they had no idea just how dark his secret life truly was. Devlin's arrest came after authorities tracked down the exact truck Michelle Halls had described, the one that had been seen in connection with Ben's disappearance. With mounting evidence, they had no choice but to bring him in for questioning. The interview, though lengthy and intense, ultimately led to the unthinkable, a shocking confession. When asked directly about his involvement in the disappearances of Sean and Ben, Devlin initially denied any wrongdoing. But the pressure was mounting. As the investigators connected the dots, they slowly revealed the truth. In a moment of undeniable pressure, Devlin broke. He admitted that Sean Hornbeck had been held in his apartment for over 4 years, living under a false identity. It was then that the unthinkable happened. Sean Hornbeck, who had been missing for more than 4 years, was found. He was living in the same apartment as Ben Umd, his captor having held both boys in a horrifying parallel reality. The apartment was described as cluttered and disorganized, with minimal signs of security. But Sean, despite being held against his will for so long, was alive. Sean's rescue was nothing short of a miracle. When the police arrived at the apartment complex where Devlin lived, they found Sean sitting calmly in the living room, playing video games. His demeanor, however, was nothing like the terror one might expect from a child who had been held captive for years. Sean, by that time, had become a shell of the boy who had been abducted in 2002. His quiet nature spoke to the trauma he had endured over the years, but the sight of him, alive and breathing, was nothing short of miraculous. Ben Umd, who had been abducted just days earlier, was also found in the same apartment. His situation mirrored Sean's, though he had not been held for as long. Both boys, though scared and traumatized, were finally free. The emotional reunions that followed are among the most heart-wrenching moments in this entire case. Sean was reunited with his parents, Pam and Craig, who had not seen their son in more than 4 years. The moment Sean saw his mother, he rushed into her arms, the two embracing in a tear-filled reunion. There were no words to describe the relief and joy that flooded the room. Craig, too, embraced his son, the bond between them as strong as ever. The moment was bittersweet: relief, joy, and the knowledge of the years lost in captivity. Ben's family, too, was reunited with their son. Though their reunion wasn't as drawn out as Sean's, the tears and joy that filled the room were the same. Both families, once torn apart by unimaginable fear, were now made whole again. With the discovery of both boys alive and the arrest of Michael Devlin, the nightmare that had haunted Richwoods for years was finally over. But the question remained: how could someone so ordinary, so seemingly harmless, be capable of such unimaginable horrors? The moment that Sean Hornbeck was found alive, the search for answers took on a new urgency. With Michael Devlin in custody, the community and law enforcement alike hoped that the trial would bring some sense of justice to the years of trauma Sean and his family had endured. What followed was a trial that captivated the nation, a painful but necessary chapter in the long process of healing. In the summer of 2007, Michael Devlin's trial began. The courtroom was filled with tension as the details of Sean's and Ben's captivity were brought to light. The prosecution presented a harrowing case, revealing the full extent of Devlin's crimes. Devlin, a seemingly ordinary man with no criminal record, had held two young boys captive for years that had shaped their lives in unimaginable ways. The defense, unable to refute the overwhelming evidence, ultimately advised Devlin to enter a guilty plea. Michael Devlin pled guilty to multiple charges, including kidnapping, sexual assault, and child abuse. His guilty plea was a bittersweet resolution to the years of suffering for Sean and Ben, but it brought little comfort to those who had been affected. The court sentenced Devlin to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never again harm another child. Yet, for Sean's family, the sentence could never undo the damage that had been done. The scars, both physical and emotional, would last a lifetime. For Sean, the years of captivity had taken a deep toll. While his parents were overjoyed at his return, they knew that their son was forever changed. The boy they had known, the playful, spirited child, was gone. In his place was a young man who carried the weight of a dark past. The trauma Sean endured had shaped his life in ways that would take years, if not a lifetime, to heal. Sean's family, however, refused to let the darkness define his future. They sought therapy for Sean, allowing him to slowly rebuild his life. But healing was a long and difficult road. Sean had to adjust to the world around him, a world that had moved on without him for over 4 years. Simple things like walking into a store or attending school now carried emotional weight. His story became a symbol of resilience, but it was also a stark reminder of the power of trauma. In the aftermath of the trial, Sean began to make public appearances. He gave interviews, shared his story, and, most importantly, used his voice to advocate for missing children. His experience became a powerful tool in raising awareness about abductions and the importance of finding and recovering missing children. Sean's courage in speaking out touched the hearts of people across the country, and he became an advocate for the very cause that had once torn his life apart. Sean's work as an advocate didn't stop with interviews. He participated in events for missing children's organizations, helping to raise funds for better tracking and recovery systems. Though his own trauma was far from over, Sean's commitment to helping others was a testament to his strength and resilience. Despite the pain he had endured, he refused to let his past define him. What do you think can drive a man to do the things Devlin did? Let us know in the comments. If this gave you goosebumps, wait till you hear what's next. Subscribe and enable notifications. We're just getting started.